Welcome to our webinar, Tools and Resources for Teaching Game Design and Coding from GameMaker. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Today, we're going to look at the different methods of teaching GameMaker at different stages as students progress through their education. So, to the agenda. We'll start with a brief overview of GameMaker and then look at the approaches to teaching game design, including feedback from our teachers following a survey we did in November 2020. We'll then look at different approaches taken for different student age groups, and for each age group, we will move on to the challenges brought about by COVID and how to adjust for home learning. We'll look at the approach to licensing and privacy, including the licensing support we are providing to all schools during COVID. And then finish up with a Q&A and how to get your free license. Before we get to the educator resources, I'd like to provide a brief overview of GameMaker Studio 2. First developed in 1999 for the use in education, it's an easy-to-use 2D game making tool. Being 2D is important for learning because it removes much of the complexity associated with 3D and allows for faster progress. Drag and drop, or D&D as you may hear me refer to it, for no-code development, so students firstly understand the fundamental building blocks and can progress to coding when they are ready, letting them progress seamlessly without hitting a wall. Custom language. We have GML, or GameMaker language. This JavaScript-like language is based on C and designed to be easy to use for game design and simple to pick up. GameMaker includes an image editor, sprite editor, object editor, and room editor. It also now includes the sequences animation tool. Free teacher resources that teach the fundamentals of coding and help students to build their own game step by step. We have a large active community with a forum and social media and beginner tips from the pros. We have big studio credibility. Students can see hundreds of real games with many multi-million sellers made with GameMaker. The link here takes you to our showcase, which contains lots of great games made with GameMaker and some award-winning games too. We have over 1,500 new users register every single day, with 90% of them being beginners. So while GameMaker is a professional tool, it is at the same time a foundation tool. We sent out a questionnaire to our teachers at the start of November 2020. The responses are consistent with when we asked the same questions back in 2019, with planning, individual confidence, and learning engagement all scoring more than 75%. When it comes to being rated somewhat effective or better. When we asked how effective are game design lessons at teaching the following, you can see the positive results on the slide. I'm often asked what age GameMaker is taught at. Today, we're going to look at the approaches taken broadly at ages 12 to 14, 15 to 16, and 17 plus. Here's broadly how teachers approach the teaching of game design from a survey of educators who use GameMaker. As you can see, the teaching of GameMaker is very hands-on, so it suits kinesthetic learners. This is probably why we hear that students who struggle to engage in other areas of the curriculum are much more motivated to engage with GameMaker game design lessons. I was recently talking to one of our teachers who provides alternative provision to children who have behavioural difficulties and who can't be accommodated in mainstream education. And he was saying the Space Bubbles video tutorials, which are part of the free educator materials, are at the right level for his students. There are 3 approaches to teaching that I'm going to cover in this presentation. First, in blue, is make a game step by step using video. This is an approach that solely relies on video tutorials where users build and extend games from no knowledge using drag and drop, and then progress into making these games using GML coding. This is more appropriate in home learning situations, out of school camps, or clubs where there's no formal framework needed for learning code. The students are learning the skills in a more hands-on way, so educators may need to provide some structure to what they've learned after using the educator classroom materials. This requires less educator input. Then in orange, making a game step by step with teacher leading, where the educator provides guidance on teaching of coding to fulfill a school curriculum, and this is reinforced with step-by-step tutorials. It comes with an assessment structure and homework. This is the approach taken by our educator resources and will require the educator to run online tutorials to go through the slides. And in green, we have the approach of setting a project for students to interpret. This is generally the approach we see taken with those aged 15, 16. This is actually the most popular approach and is used in more advanced curricula where students are required to show creativity and practical implementation of programming. For this approach, I will show you the resources that we can provide and guidance and inspiration. So this is how teachers evaluate the progress being made by students. Our free tutorials include fully documented teacher and peer evaluation criteria. Assessing progress can be a difficult part of home learning, and GameMaker enables easy sharing of games so educators can check on the progress. In a previous survey, we got some great feedback from educators on how using game design has aided the education process at their school. The kids are happier in class, there aren't behavior problems like in other classes. Games require creatives and tech teams to work together with a common goal to solve. While they build games, they also build friendships, learn to overcome hardships and create something meaningful. My students very much enjoy the game design units that I teach. Personally, I think that game design is effective at improving problem solving, attention to detail, and teamwork. The students have learned to solve complex or abstract problems by themselves. The content provides a sufficient challenge and helps develop persistence and attention to detail. It has certainly enabled some students who are otherwise disengaged from the curriculum to re-engage. So what are the students? What about the students? What do they get out of it? What do they enjoy the most? Definitely the end where they finally tried their game, even if it was the most simple game in the world. Learning to overcome challenges and have a working program. The students love to show their parents what they have made by themselves. They're very proud if they get their ideas done and improve their skills. The feeling of accomplishment when completing a game and watching others play the game that they have built. Just being able to create an original game, then watch their peers play the game is such a high for these kids. To be able to say, I made that is a real ego boost. Creating games, making rapid progress in a short span of time. Thinking up new game ideas. Brainstorming is normally a pain to get students to do, but not when it involves games design. And seeing their ideas take shape. Looking at different styles of teaching at age 12 to 14, school curriculums are mainly focused on teaching students the fundamentals of coding and giving them engaging ways to enable them to put it into practice. And to this end, we created space bubbles for an education environment. There is a list of everything included in the materials. Space Bubbles is a D&D project-based scheme of work where students work on one project over the course of 8 one-hour lessons, with 30 minutes being spent on learning code and 30 minutes being spent on making the Space Bubbles game. Over these lessons, students are taught how to program by recreating their own version of the game Space Bubbles using video tutorials, aimed at children aged 12 to 14, but can be used for older and younger, and developed by Terry Watts, who is a teacher and formerly a game designer. In a home learning environment, the lesson can be taught using Zoom, and the students can progress using the video tutorials. They are able to export their game, submit their game for evaluation by the teacher, and complete their self-assessment forms. Each lesson has its own starter project, so if a student gets stuck, they can move on to the next lesson quickly. Excuse me. The curriculum topics covered include programming key concepts and principles, sequencing, selection statements and iteration, modeling the state and behavior of real-world problems and physical systems, making hot chocolate in the homeworks, for example, and also contains teacher review, self-review, and peer review. Moving now to video tutorials, which don't require a teacher to lead. This is the first of our consumer tutorials where students can learn on their own. This game is based on the classics Asteroid game for beginners with many of the same mechanics as Space Bubbles. It covers both drag and drop and GameMaker language, so you can make the game in D&D and then remake it in GML. This is an official tutorial made by one of our community educators, Friendly Cosmonaut. So it is a different teaching style and includes an intro to GameMaker. The focus of this is to retain engagement through quick wins. You create your ship and you get it moving within a few minutes before layering on additional elements. Space Mods builds on Space Rocks. It also has D&D and GML versions. This additional content can also support students who need more help with the Space Bubbles extension and challenge tasks. It contains power-ups, enemy ships, cameras, parallax or layered backgrounds for a 3D perspective, and visual effects such as particles and screen shake. There's a nice comment here from one of our users who felt that they were able to start making their own modifications to the games once they had completed Space Mods. Breakthrough is a brick-breaker game. It's taught for both GML and D&D, so students have the opportunity to develop the game with both methods. Around half of all projects being worked on in GameMaker are D&D, so there's no need to go to GML until you're ready. This is a totally different style of game, but the teaching is still at beginner level. Fire Jump is one of our more recent tutorials. It is a drag and drop full game tutorial that introduces the basics of GameMaker's D&D system to create your own infinite platformer game. It comes in as a 4-part tutorial series. Please check it out after the webinar. Click the link for more information, and on the site there is a link to play the web version of the game. From the age 15 to 16, we see the school curriculum focusing more on the creative application of coding. With project-based tutorials, you can set a theme and see how your students interpret it based on a marking scheme. The scheme could include the following: interpretation of the theme, complexity or functionality used, playability, coding practice, creativity. Here are resources for tools, artwork, audio, etc. that can be used as the basis for game creation. The Global Game Jam resources at the bottom are particularly noteworthy as they run the world's largest game jam each year, which takes place over 3 days. We also have blog articles that can provide inspiration from our team and pro developers alike. These can fit in well with the Space Bubbles and Space Rocks tutorials. They cover a wide variety of topics from planning, creating game mechanics, how-tos, getting your game finished, and how to make your code look neat, and much, much more. You'll never be short of inspiration and guides for how to do things on YouTube. And here's just a sample of games and tutorials that can be found easily on YouTube. All GameMaker Studio 2 features and settings are fully documented with examples in our online manual. One of the problems with home learning students aged 15 to 16 is that group learning and projects can be more difficult to achieve. To assist, we have official video tutorials that are accessible through our YouTube channel. These take you through all the tools, editors, and how they work. Watch this space as we're always having and adding more video tutorials to the site. If you're looking for a more expansive set of game tutorials, this set of video tutorials start at beginner level using GameMaker language and then progress to intermediate. It also connects to the author's own video platformer tutorials on YouTube. This is Sean Spaulding's platformer, which links to ours and contains a further 27 videos. We have new education materials that we have released. This is a more detailed GML-based game design tutorial for artists and people starting to learn game design at college or university, where you are guided on how to make a game called Town, an adventure playing game created by university lecturer and game designer Ben Rivers. Ben teaches game design for the Faculty of Design at OCAD, Ontario. These materials include a detailed booklet and video tutorials, which students can use to make the game in 8 one-hour lessons. There are about 9 hours of video, and we also provide guidance for educators on how to teach it and how to evaluate progress. Little Time will utilize more advanced functionality within GameMaker, including our sequences animation functionality. All licenses provided have access to sequences. For older students aged 16 plus, there is also the facility for them to engage with our community for help with their projects using our forum, GameMaker Community Forum. We have 3 types of licenses available, and these can be purchased through Studica. There's Educator, which contains our desktop licenses, Educator Plus, that contains desktop and web, Achiever, that contains desktop, web, mobile, UWP, and PlayStation 4. Licenses come with 1- and 2-year options. These seats are concurrent use licenses, so they can be used for multiple classes. GameMaker can be used on PC and Mac, not yet on Chromebook, but due to overwhelming demand from these webinars, we have a version in development. As can be seen from the survey in November 2020, at the time, only 5% of teachers were unaffected by COVID. As a consequence, we provided support to our users throughout COVID. Currently, until the end of June 2022, all seat licenses can be used by 5 students simultaneously. So 30 seats used in a computer lab can be used simultaneously by 150 students at home. Hopefully we won't need to extend beyond June because the world will be a safer place, but we will look at this nearer the time and see if measures need to be extended again. Privacy in education is important to us. The seats are entirely anonymous, including the usernames and passwords, which are randomly generated. No PII is collected. There is more information on our privacy policy and specific section on our approach to education. We're also approved for use in education. We're also approved for use by educationframework.com. And as a thank you for attending our webinar and making it to the end, you're eligible to receive a free teacher license. Christy will send you a link, or click the button when we send you the slides for the step-by-step instructions. And now, does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Stuart. As a teacher, what support materials, the best way to access the support materials would be through your website, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Yeah, you'll be able to access it from our website and download.
Okay, and then can the seats also be used for after-school activities?
Yes, yeah, totally. So if you have a computer lab that you use for after-school activities, yes, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and it looks like one last question.
Flexible.
How can students download GameMaker without creating an account?
Right, so if you go to the education page on the Yo-Yo Games website, there is a download option there that students can go to download the product, and then they can just use their username and password that the teacher has created for them.
Awesome, that looks like the end of the questions.
No worries. Okay, I will now hand over to you to go through the next steps.
Great, thank you so much, Stuart. If anybody would like any more information about GameMaker, if you have questions, or if you would like a quote, please feel free to contact us at Studica. The number's on the screen, or you can always email info@studica.com, and we'll be happy to help you. I will send a follow-up recording of this webinar and a link to all this helpful information and the trial in a few days. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy your day.